So, as I'm recording this, the day before, I didn't even recall this. Like, I don't keep track of many dates for album drops, but it was around midnight Friday, um, and I got a recommendation because I was listening to Hollywood Baby. It was a song by 100 gecs that came out, and I was curious on what they were gonna do for the next album because even though I'm a huge critic of them, and I don't think that they were capable of making a good album. I decided to listen to what they had to offer because fuck it, like whatever. They don't write these long tracks anyway, and I was admittedly surprised when I heard a song that had progression and structure like a top 40 song. Like this song was primed to be on the radio. I'm surprised because I said this 3 years ago. I used to write consistently about music. I didn't write amazingly well. I think most of my writing back then was dog shit. But I still hold my 100 gecs review in high regard because I think it's one of the best things I wrote about music. They're not a very good band because they don't want to be a good band. They hide behind irony and they use just very basic tactics to fool the listener into thinking they're listening to anti-consumerist, anti-capitalist, whatever you want to call it, kind of music. When in reality they're just marching right in line just like everybody else. If you hate the baby, if you hate like Dua Lipa or Doja Cat or whoever else, you hate 100 gecs and you still listen to them anyway. That was the point of my original review. I listened to that album I think 3 times or so, 3 4 times. That whole 1,000 gecs, all 1,000 of them. I listened to every single gec, and I came to the conclusion that they just don't want to be good intentionally. This is an intentional ploy to fool people into thinking that they are quirky and relatable and clever for listening to objectively bad music. And people have done something kind of like this for decades. You had artists like Peaches in the early 2000s. You had Basement Jacks in the late 90s. You had people who were combining sounds and elements to create all these types of different scapes and like whimsical whimsies to basically just, be a counterculture in a way. And they usually were either semi-successful or they faded away because it just wasn't a sound people were willing to accept at the time. But now with the internet and memes and all that poison, we've come to a point where spectacle means more than sincerity, and this is where this band comes in. They have attempted to rewrite history because 10,000 gecs has some debatably decent writing. A lot more than the first album. The only problem is it still has the identity crisis that the first album had, where it's just bad music. It wants to be good so badly, but it just falls short every single time. The first song, called The Dumbest Girl Alive, you could have fooled me if you said this wasn't 100 gecs. You honestly could have. A lot of these songs do have that whole concept of if you gave this to a more competent person or someone who wanted to try to impress you, you'd be left with a much better song. Whether or not, though, it'd be genuine is up for debate. But that's always been the conversation with this band as well. How genuine or how sincere or, why am I even going to listen to this? I understand that comedy plays an aspect into bands like this, but it just gives it so much damage. If you're gonna complain about really bad artists like Lil Dicky, you should be complaining about this too. There is nothing here, nothing that can be considered good music. Nothing here that can be considered enjoyable, because every time it gets to that point, they throw it all away. What's crazy about a song like Doritos and Fritos is you could expect it in a way, again, if it was given to someone with sincerity in mind instead of, cynicism and nihilism and the idea that they're being postmodern. If you gave it to someone like that, you could actually expect this in like a game like Project Diva, Hatsune Miku Project Diva, or whatever the hell it's called. This is a rhythm game song, but they fuck it up anyway with an awful hook. There's either always an awful hook or an awful line, or just being just washed in really mediocre, just like middling production that again squanders every song from reaching any kind of potential. My problem again with the first album was it gave off the idea to people who are too easy to fool that, yeah, what you're listening to is the next wave. It is going to change the landscape of pop music. It's going to do this and that. Hyperpop is going to be the cataclysmic clashing of generations. And look where it is now. Look where PC music is now. Who the fuck is listening to A.G. Cook? Who is seriously fucking listening to A.G. Cook? Nobody. Fucking nobody. Who's listening to Girlfriend of the Year? Remember Girlfriend of the Year? If you don't, thank God you don't. And the Sophie's fucking dead. There's literally no one's listening to this shit. Nobody. So yeah. I don't know what else I need to say. They have just repeated exactly what they did on the first album. And if you think they didn't, you don't listen to enough music, because they definitely did the exact same thing. The only difference is, again, they have lowered the curtain just a little bit so you can see the gears, and then you start thinking, why does this sound so different? I don't understand. Trust me, if I know anything about music, I know when I see people who are trying too hard or not trying hard enough. And these guys, yeah, it's quite noticeable. Again, comparing the first album and this, there are so many like comparisons that you can make. Again, with Hand Crushed by Mal or whatever it's called, if you compare it to almost any of these songs, but I think specifically The Dumbest Girl Alive and Hollywood Baby, there's just there's writing there, and they screw it up because of like vocal distortion or just this very annoying nails on the chalkboard just type of like thought process. Like, just imagine if you're in a boardroom and everyone has those ratchet long nails that you stick on, and the whole board meeting desk, or not desk, fucking table, the whole thing is a chalkboard. Actually, it's a chalkboard. And they also have, for whatever reason, they have chip bags, and they're trying to grab the chips out of the bag. All of this ruffling and scraping. But you're in a boardroom, though, and we're talking actually about something super important. We're talking about why The stock has crashed for our company. This is that band, if that was a thing. And I know that probably sounded overly unnecessary, but I need you to understand that's what you're listening to. You're listening to people who want to talk about things that are possibly deep or personal, and they just end up throwing it all away because you can't listen to them. They're just insufferable. It's insufferable. So, in conclusion, I'm going to give this album a 2 out of 10. I gave that to the remix album when it came out. I gave the original album a big-ass goose egg because it was honestly just appalling to me personally. It offended me personally so much so that it deserved a big old goose egg. But this one actually deserves a -1, rather, not even a 2. I was being nice before. I think a -1's even better, because I just realized how this one insulted me even more. And it insulted the people who consider themselves 100 gecs fans. If you consider yourself a fan of this music, they are insulting you by making this music, because they think you're so stupid that you can't recognize this from what's on the radio right now. So again, I wish people like this all the best of luck. I don't have any ill intentions when I do about this. I love to talk about music, and I love to see people improve. I love to see people progress their sound. I don't like to see them stagnate, and I don't like to see them insult their own listeners. Whether they intend to or not, they are insulting their listeners by doing this shit. So again, this thing sucks. Possibly worse than the first album. It's debatable, but they're objectively both bad. They're just both bad. Okay? If you want to take away anything from this, bad. Okay? Because that's what you're going to do anyway. You're just going to be like, he didn't say anything. And again, if you like this stuff, more power to you. Honestly, more power to you. But no.